Happening now on Grid Tonight. As my screen has frozen, Atlanta Motor Speedway is no more. Say hello to EchoPark Speedway. What's the significance behind the name change? And I'm going to have to leave that up on the screen because my screen is frozen, guys. The rest of our stories, Jorge Martin and Aprilia appear to be headed for a divorce. Can the two sides continue working together for now without the awkwardness? And Max Verstappen finally spoke out about his incident with George Russell. Can the four-time Formula One world champion mind his manners for the rest of the month to avoid a race ban? And as soon as the segment over, guys, I'll let you start talking, and then I'll have to head out, sign back in, because for some reason my screen has completely frozen on the graphics and I can't move them at all. So technical difficulties there on StreamYard. And with that said, hello to all of our viewers watching here in the United States and around the world. Welcome to Grid Tonight, your weekly motorsports news program. I'm Kobe Lambert, and with me are Joshua Birch from JB Motorsports and Matt White from Grid Endurance Performance Index. We encourage everyone to interact with us in the chat, support us through Super Chat, and visit gridnetworktv.com for our latest content. And Josh, I'll let you get to our top story this evening. When you start talking, Matt, I'll head out and sign back in.
Thanks, Kobe. Yeah, we just can't escape technological issues at the moment. It was my internet last week. Kobe's screen's frozen now. Let's keep our fingers crossed that Matt doesn't run into any issues. So, Atlanta Motor Speedway will now be known as the EchoPark Speedway, for at least the next 7 years. Now, this multi-million-dollar agreement between Speedway Motorsports and EchoPark Automotive was announced only a few weeks before the newly named EchoPark Speedway kicks off the inaugural NASCAR In-Season Challenge on Saturday night, June 28th on TNT. Now, the Smith family is involved in this deal because David B. Smith, the CEO of Sonic Automotive that owns EchoPark, is the brother of SMI CEO Marcus Smith. Now, this isn't the first time we've seen a company take over the naming rights of a racetrack. Other examples include Charlotte Motor Speedway, previously being called the Lowe Motor Speedway. Now, Phoenix Raceway was ISM Raceway. California Speedway became Auto Club Speedway. Sonoma Raceway used to be called the Infineon Raceway. And in the present day, Gateway is known as Worldwide Technology Raceway. Graphic courtesy there of the newly renamed EchoPark Speedway. I keep calling it Eco because we had the Eco restart earlier on in the year, and then we had the EchoPark restart, and it's just like they merge into a lot over it. But Matt, do you anticipate everyone continuing to call this track Atlanta, or will the name catch on like Lowe's Motor Speedway did with a lot of fans back in the day?
Good evening, everyone. Hello. Yeah, we've fallen into the show much like we fell out of the show with your internet problems last week. We've fallen into the show this week with Kobe's issue. Will it be called Atlanta Motor Speedway? Yes, amongst all of the fans. Yes, of course it will. I think everyone still called it Phoenix in the ISM days, and that didn't last very long, did it? Because of ISM's financial woes. So, yeah, I think it's still going to be Atlanta Motor Speedway for everybody, generally, apart from obviously on the broadcast and in print and whatnot else. But generally across social media and amongst the fan base, it will always be Atlanta Motor Speedway. If this had been a new track that had been built and then had the spot, and then, the sponsorship of the racetrack was at the beginning of its lifespan, I don't know, say Donington Park was McDonald's Raceway or something here in the UK, just for, we'd call it, McDonald's Raceway, wouldn't we? Something like that. But because everyone knows it as A, don't change it to B and expect people to forget that A was there already.
Do you remember when we used to call it Simply Sausages? When after all that mess, Donington got taken over by Simply Sausages. Then MSV came in and took it over. And now it's back being Donington. Although, for the love of God, install air conditioning in your commentary boxes, because that was the one downside. Okay, now taking a look at NASCAR's new in-season challenge. This concept is similar to the NBA's in-season tournament, giving drivers something additional to race for in the middle of the season. Now, as I mentioned, it kicks off at Atlanta, then it continues at Chicago, Sonoma, and Dover before the in-season challenge champion is crowned at Indianapolis. Now, as you see on the screen, those are the 32 drivers who are eligible for the $1 million grand prize. Brad Keselowski was the last driver to lock in after Nashville. Shane Van Gisbergen, Cole Costa, Riley Herbst, and Cody Ware were the 4 full-time drivers to miss out after failing to get into the top 32 in points. For the next 3 races at Michigan, Mexico City, and Pocono, drivers will be seeded by their best finish in those races. Now, the first tiebreaker is the next best finish in the 3 races that determine in-season challenge seeding, and the next tiebreaker would be the points standings after Pocono. On his Actions Detrimental podcast, Denny Hamlin said he believes the seeding should just be 1 through 32 in points, because determining this on 3 races could lead to flawed or misleading narratives. Hamlin used the example of someone like William Byron having 3 bad finishes in a row, then being the number 32 seed, and if a driver of his caliber were to beat his opponent at Atlanta, would that really classify as an upset in a bracket? Now, he also mentioned how a driver lower in points could string together 3 good races and get a higher seeding in the bracket as well, the graphic courtesy of NASCAR. Well, Matt, is Denny Hamlin right to be concerned about how NASCAR has decided to use the next 3 races to seed the in-season challenge and the possibility of it creating the flawed narratives?
Much like the All-Star race has become a pit of confusion with its formats and competition yellows and alternate tyres a few years ago, this was something that, well, for starters, this didn't need to happen anyway, full stop. But now we're getting it, and now it's confusing. You're quite right. It should have been 1 to 32. If one advances against 32 or whatever, however, the next round should have been 1 against whatever, whatever 32 is halved. I can't do the maths at this late in the day. And then they go again, and then they go again. We don't have the best bracket. It's not really a bracket because it gets drawn every time, but the best bracket in the world is the FA Cup here in the UK, and we don't have to have any seeding before every single round of it, apart from they're given new numbers on the balls and they're pulled out the hat. That seems to work fine and has done for over 100 years. It's typical NASCAR just trying to confuse matters for the sake of confusing matters. Denny's right. It should have been 1 through 32. You move on, you play the next person on your side of the draw, and it filters down, much like the World Cup does in soccer in its knockout form. You filter down, and the people that are left at the end play off for the final race at Indianapolis or whatever it works out to be. I've even lost track of when it's supposed to be and who's in it now, to be honest, because it's got ultra confusing, disappointing for him, but probably good for some people that they won't come up against Shane Van Gisbergen at Chicago because he's not made the cut, because he's probably going to do fairly decently at that race, you would have thought. And he's had a good couple of weeks coming to this. He just didn't get the points to get in after Nashville last week. But Brad's in. He'll go well at Michigan this week and perhaps at his home track and get himself a decent seeding. But it didn't need to be. Seeding shouldn't have even been mentioned. From the beginning, this should have been 1st to 32, and then you chomp them all down and see who's left at the end.
Well, like we saw when the playoffs were drawn in, back when it was known as the Chase, we're going to see quite a lot of changes, I feel, over the years. This is the first year we've seen it, and I don't think everybody's really looking forward to it. I mean, it's not the regular season, but it is still the regular season, and it's still counted by the same time. It's so confusing. It's like we've got to keep track of 2 things at once in a very difficult 4-hour window. So, yeah.
Well, I will speak for my Ultimate Sports Radio Network colleagues when I say we won't be talking about this on our races on the air.
Do you know what? I don't think I will either. I think I'll be sticking to the actual stage points.
The actual races and the playoff picture and the championship standings.
Yeah, that's all I'm going to be sticking to. And when we get to Chicago, everyone's going to be looking up at the sky just to make sure A, it doesn't get dark, and B, it's not going to rain. But then again, they have moved the start time a bit, so keep your fingers crossed. Okay, so while we've been discussing Atlanta's name change, Trackhouse Racing development driver Connor Zilic will be racing there in the Cup Series in a few weeks. Now, Trackhouse added 2 more races to his schedule in the number 87 Red Bull Chevrolet. He'll also get a road course race at Watkins Glen. Atlanta will be his 3rd start at NASCAR's Premier level. In his last Cup race at Charlotte, he logged all the laps and finished 23rd as well. Now, as it said, nothing beats experiencing Zilich said nothing beats experience at the Cup level, and he's grateful for 2 more starts in the next-gen car. This news comes after Jordan Bianchi as well from The Athletic dropped some silly season news about Trackhouse's driver lineup for 2026. Bianchi as well reported that with Ross Chastain delivering for the team and on a multi-year contract, Daniel Suarez and Shane Van Gisbergen could be at risk of losing their seats if they decide to promote Zilich. He mentioned that Zilich and SVG still have terms remaining on their contract, while Suarez, who has also been known to sign year-to-year deals, will have his contract expire at the end of the 2025 season. The easy thing to do is to simply let Suarez's contract expire and promote Zilich to the number 99 Chevrolet full-time next year. But it's not that simple of a situation. Bianchi says that Trackhouse love Suarez. He brings sponsorship. He has a good relationship with those sponsors, and he's a better oval racer than SVG. However, it's been a tough year for Suarez, who's 28th in the points. SVG, however, is 33rd in points, the first driver to miss out on the in-season challenge, and he's really struggling a lot to get up to speed on the ovals. He brings sponsorship as well, like Suarez. But we've seen some improvements in recent weeks from SVG on the ovals, and he's starting to look more competitive instead of hanging out at the back of the field. He recently got a top 15 in the Coca-Cola 600 at Charlotte and qualified inside the top 25 at Nashville. Now, while the improvement has been noticeable, I suggest that Trackhouse could decide that SVG has hit his peak as a NASCAR driver and drop him for Zilich while keeping Suarez. He brought up the point that with Mexico City, Chicago, and Sonoma coming up on the schedule soon, winning in any of those races could go a long way in SVG securing his future with Trackhouse. When asked about Zilich's future with the organization, team owner Justin Marks told The Athletic that they don't have any expectations for results from Zilich in his limited Cup starts, and since the Cup car is so different from the Xfinity car, they just want him to get experience with the next-gen car, and the only way to do that is to enter a 4th car. Now, one thing is clear, Trackhouse has a lot of thinking and tough decisions to make over the next few weeks and months. A link to this article is in the video description below, graphic courtesy of Trackhouse Racing. Well, if what I'm hearing the MotoGP paddock is true, it looks like Trackhouse is having hot swaps all the way around on their seats going forward at the moment. So how should Trackhouse approach this tricky situation with 4 drivers under contract and only 3 seats for 2026? Should they bring back the same lineup next year with select Cup races with another year at Xfinity, or move on from Suarez or SVG to promote their younger star?
Yeah, we'll talk Trackhouse. Well, we'll talk MotoGP in a minute because there's plenty going on there. But let's focus on Trackhouse's NASCAR program because Justin Marks has got all the plates spinning at the moment. Good to see Connor getting another couple of starts. That is good because don't forget he came back at Charlotte after having missed a couple of races in Xfinity with injury after a crash at the end of April, wasn't it, when he hurt himself at Talladega and missed a couple of races, came back, then he did the whole of the 600, as you said, Josh, completed all of the laps. Good run. Last year, earlier in the season, of course, we saw him at COTA in the Cup Series. Didn't really get to show what he had because he was involved in an early accident, which took him out of the race. Also good on Zilich's part that Watkins Glen is on his now list because last year he absolutely smoked the field in the Xfinity Series to get his first win in that championship there last summer. So very good memories of that for him, and I'm sure he'll take some of those learnings into that race in August. There's a lot going on. I've mentioned SVG before. One of the reasons he was kind of brought into this into NASCAR now, to use the old ESPN TV show phrase, is because of the playoffs. If he can get a win or maybe more on these road course races, and you can bundle Chicago in with that, locks himself straight into the playoffs. He's in, he's done. He's been getting better on the ovals. We have to keep reminding ourselves that this is his first full season in the Cup Series. He's going to a lot of these tracks now that he hasn't been to in the Cup car. Well, as we know, and we've talked about this a lot on the show over the last year and a half or so, this Cup car very much different to the Xfinity car, for which he had a lot of experience in last year, of course, did the full season. And when he went back to tracks that he'd been to before, there was a marked uptick in his performance. Now, over the last couple of weeks, he's done, got a lot better. Great performance at Charlotte a couple of weeks ago. Decent run at Nashville again this weekend, just gone. So it's all on the uptick for SVG. So there's that. Then you look at the Xfinity races. He was going to do the Mexico Xfinity race in a couple of weeks' time. That's now been taken away from him and given to Suarez. Why Daniel Suarez wasn't in that race to start off with, goodness only knows, in front of his home fans. But that's a story for another day. So he's in. Again, you go back to SVG, first year as a full-timer in Cup, and he's only 5 spots below Suarez in the point standings, who's had however many years in the Cup Series now. And, he's only sort of victories and good runs or close to wins have kind of come in sort of somewhat lucky circumstances, I suppose you could call them. That win at Atlanta last year hasn't really shown front running speed outside of that, really, that I can remember since. And that was last February, second race of the season, of course, with that dramatic 3-wide finish with Ryan Blaney and Kyle Busch. So pressure is on Suarez, and we talked about this a lot. I seem to remember us doing a bit on the show about this time last year, where he was under pressure. Then he gets an extension to keep him in. And he's talked today in some of his media availability that, he's got a lot on his plate at the minute. Mexico coming up soon. He'll be, absolutely hounded by all the media down there, and he'll have all that stuff to get on with while he's having all the contract talk in the background. So the pressure is on for Suarez. He needs to perform over this next month, 6 weeks, to put himself in the window where he can get himself a seat and keep Zilich out. Because if it looks for all certainty that whoever Trackhouse decide not to run, Suarez or Shane, next year, Zilich will get the gig. You're not going to get rid of Ross Chastain. As you said, he's on a multi-year deal, and he's been one of the stars of the Cup Series so far, especially that run at Charlotte a few weeks ago. So Suarez really, under the blowtorch at the moment. It would be fitting, wouldn't it, if he could come out and win in Mexico in a few weeks' time? That would just be the icing on the cake for him. But then again, you've got Chicago coming up where SVG is going to go well. So it's going to be an ebb and flow battle between the two to see who gets the ride for next year, if they are serious on promoting Zilich straight up into the Cup Series next year full time.
I think Zilich he needs to be in the Cup Series now. I agree with you. I don't know. Has SVG worked in the Cup Series only at a few venues? Why? I don't know why he doesn't do what Scotty Mack's done and go and try IndyCar. That is the logical step for me.
He's a couple of years older than Scotty, and he's taller, which doesn't help him. He's going to squeeze himself into that midget car, though, aren't they? With this new thing that he and Scotty Mack have got going on over the summer, which is going to be fun to see. But and also on Shane's side, he's got his girlfriend working for Chevrolet.
That's true.
Who will go, don't forget about my partner here, please, and give him a ride. So another thing you can add on top of Suarez is he's, please stop piling with the pylon here, because I'm struggling. But has it worked? Well, he came out of the blocks and blew everybody away, didn't he, at Chicago 2 years ago, where the collective we said, oh, he's not going to win. And I'm sitting here going, he's going to win.
He won.
And he won quite convincingly. Had a chance to win there again last year, was beaten by Alex Bowman. He's had other chances to win at some of these road course races, and it's kind of not fallen his way for various reasons. He was really good on most of the road courses last year in Xfinity. Of course, won at Sonoma. had a dust up with Austin Hill at Cota last spring. So, I mean, he's doing, I know I'm slightly biased on this, quite literally wearing an SVG shirt tonight under my jumper. But he's done more over the last 18 months across Cup and Xfinity than Suarez has.
Yeah.
I don't think you can argue that.
Looking forward to seeing how Collins does in a Cup at Atlanta. Sorry, at Watkins Glen. Why did I say Atlanta? It's in my brain. Yeah, I was looking at Watkins Glen earlier on and looking at the layout, and it suits Zilich's driving style quite a bit. So I think we're going to be an interesting race when we get there. And I'm also hoping SVG does well when I go to Talladega in October. I got to call the Talladega race. Admittedly, it was from a hotel room, but I got to call the Talladega, and it was the most boring Talladega of the year and that we've ever had. So, yeah, not great. Is NASCAR turning chicken salad into chicken, you know what, again?
Yes.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. I'm trying to think of a McDonald's recipe as well that everybody hated, and they kept bringing it back. But I can't. So back to your McDonald's
McDonald's Raceway in Derbyshire. Yes.
I would love a McDonald's Raceway. Think about it. We could call it the Big Mac checkered flag line or something. Last lap, sponsored by, I don't know, Ronald McDonald.
That's the McFlurry chicane.
Oh, yeah. And into the McRib tire wall.
And he's through at the unlimited refills hairpin.
Out comes the pace car. Why does it look like a clown car? Out comes 1, Marshall 2, Marshall 3, Marshall 4. Okay. Getting away from what is now an awesome idea. If they can call it the McFlurry chicane because it doesn't really work now. I was just putting on chat. Moving on to MotoGP, and yesterday Aprilia provided a medical update on Jorge Martin's condition. But first, let's catch up on all of the drama that's been happening for the last couple of weeks. Now, while we were busy with our coverage for the 109th Indianapolis 500, drama was unfolding between Aprilia and Martin. The defending MotoGP world champion has stated his intentions of leaving Aprilia at the end of the 2025 season. He says, "Hello, everyone. I would like to share with all the fans, media, and people who follow my career a clear explanation about my situation with Aprilia. At no time have I ever breached the contract. When we signed it, I agreed with Aprilia that if certain circumstances were not met, I reserved the right to decide my future for 2026. This was an essential condition for me to accept the contract proposal they offered me at that time. When I made the decision to change manufacturers last year, one of my premises was to have the possibility to test the bike in real circumstances and to understand the team and its working methodology. In this way, I could feel comfortable signing for 2 years instead of 1, and so we included that condition. Faced with the situation of having to make a decision on a date that is established by contract, I've decided to exercise my right to release myself for the 2026 season. I have always done so respectively, clearly, and with the sole intention of taking control of my future as a professional athlete. Unfortunately, the circumstances that have occurred as a result of the crashes, although it is true that they do not affect what we agreed, have conditioned this phase. That is why I have always been open to dialogue with Aprilia to extend this period to a certain number of Grand Prix after my return to competition. The aim is that both parties can give each other a second chance and feel comfortable before making a decision for 2026. I have always been honest with Aprilia. I have always valued the bike, the team, and the effort of all the people who are part of the project. Aprilia, and one more page. The only thing I ask is that my will and the spirit of what we agreed at the time with Aprilia will be respected. There is no conflict or reproach. I just want to be able to look ahead with clarity after very difficult times and very serious injury to continue to give the best of myself on and off the track. Thank you for your understanding and respect, Jorge Martin. So I wish they would not directly translate it from Spanish because some of the grammatical errors really come through there. Aprilia then released this statement from their Milan factory. The contract between Aprilia Racing and Jorge Martin is valid and in effect, and as such, it must be respected by both parties until its expiration, end of 2026. Aprilia Racing has honoured it in full with the agreed upon timeline and terms and will continue to do so in the future. Aprilia Racing denies that any negotiations are taking place between the parties to modify the duration of the contract, which remains as originally agreed upon. The team has no comment on matters that do not directly concern it, but expects other teams to refrain from making any kind of offer to riders who are under contract. Such paper would, in a case, not be legitimate. The entire team will continue to support Jorge through his recovery process, and it always has, look forward to seeing him back on the track with the RSGP. I mean, it has been circulating the MotoGP paddock ever since this rumor came up for the British Grand Prix weekend. It came out at France, and it came out at Silverstone, and the big thing that came out of Silverstone with Marco Bezzecchi taking the win was, this is proof to Jorge that this bike can win. And the very next day, he's done this. So, Kobe, back with us, starting with you. Is Martin at risk of hurting his reputation with this tactic? And do you see Honda, KTM, or Yamaha entertaining his services?
Well, Josh, I'm afraid that Jorge Martin could be at the risk of being just like his countryman over in Formula One, Fernando Alonso, making some really strange career moves at a certain time, because we've seen time and time again with Fernando. He makes one career move, and then all of a sudden the team he was with, suddenly gets better, and you're wondering what on earth is going on over here. And with Jorge Martin, I don't really understand what's going on in his mind at the moment, but he already left Ducati because he was so butthurt that they decided to promote Marc Marquez to the Ducati factory team, and he didn't get it, so he decided to make a knee-jerk reaction and just go to Aprilia like that. And then the Aprilia bike, at first wasn't what it seemed to be for him, and then we saw the result in the British Grand Prix, and then with Marco Bezzecchi, and now you're wondering, like, maybe he made a premature decision to decide that, hey, I want out of Aprilia at the end of this year. I want to go somewhere else in 2026. And given the tactic, and given how he left Ducati like that, and the attack he just pulled on Aprilia, if I were Honda, KTM, or Yamaha, I'd be a little concerned. And if Jorge Martin were to become available, I would approach that with an extreme amount of caution because of how this guy handles business. Because if you're Honda, KTM, or Yamaha, you're going to be wondering, is this someone that we can trust? That even during the tougher days, is he going to allow us time to develop our bike, potentially get up there and battle the Ducatis for wins and championships? Because right now, given the data when all this happened, then you see the Aprilia go on and win one of the most recent race. You certainly have to wonder, like, what on earth is going on with Jorge Martin. It definitely doesn't paint him in the most positive light, so to speak.
Yes, it's burning many bridges. Is Mr. Martin, the current world champion. So we've got this going on with Aprilia. So that's strike that off. I don't think however this ends, end of this year, end of next, you won't see Jorge Martin back on an Aprilia ever in MotoGP, depending on who pulls out first. He retires, or Aprilia decide they don't want to be in the championship anymore. I don't think that's ever going to happen. You fell out with Ducati, as we talked about a lot last season, and of course they're a bit in a huff, went and signed for Aprilia, and now this has happened. In 2020, during the COVID period, he was in Moto 2 on a KTM, and a very similar thing happened there. So that's KTM gone, Aprilia gone, Ducati gone. So he's only really left with Honda and Yamaha if he wants to stay in MotoGP. If you had to choose one of them if he had a free choice at the moment between them two, you'd probably pick Yamaha, because, as we've seen from Fabio Quartararo over the last 3 or 4 races, they are getting much, much better, especially in qualifying speed. But we haven't seen him. We've seen him once, haven't we, all season at Qatar, and he was 3/4 of the race before he fell off there and got run over by Fabio Di Giannantonio and hurt himself again. So it's going to be a long time before we see him back, as we're going to get to in a second. And when he does come back, what kind of performance are they at? As Bezzecchi proved in a slightly older race at Silverstone, the bike has got the capability of winning, and they, of course, won there last year with Aleix Espargaro as well at Silverstone. So could just be sort of bit track specific, but I don't know. What does he do? He's basically written himself out of riding for any of the European manufacturers again, unless BMW do finally pull the pin and come to MotoGP in the next couple of years, which again is a rumor that won't go away.
It's not going away, no. BMW was seriously considering it. I think that's what is holding Top Rat Razgaliolu back in the World Superbikes, because is he staying with BMW or is he going back to Honda? That's a rumor. But Honda in MotoGP to replace somebody else who's leaving. It's a mess.
And on Top Rack, there is that rumor that he's going to go to Honda in World Superbike for a year, perhaps, and then come to MotoGP after the rule change. But depending on what websites you read, we're going to get an announcement at Mugello in a couple of weeks' time that Top Rack's coming to Yamaha in MotoGP next season. So that one's up in the air too. And that if they take Top Rack, then that's another of the Jorge Martin opportunities gone, because they'll take Top Rack over Martin.
But there is also another option that I've said right from the beginning, is the fact is that, we know that Martin fell out with Ducati, but he didn't fall out with Prima Pramac. And Prima Pramac are now running the Yamaha, and Miller's only on a 1-year contract. It could be, and who was the only team in the paddock who showed support to Martin after his accident? Oh yeah, Prima Pramac. They were wearing all the armbands as well. They said, "Oh yeah, we stay with him. He's our champion." I am fully under the assumption that by the end of next year he'll be back with them on that Yamaha bike. Then see what's happening in the main factory Yamaha, because the one thing you can't do in MotoGP is you can't go from factory bike to factory bike. That's why Mark had to spend a year on the satellite Ducati, because he went from Honda to Ducati, and he can't go from Aprilia, which is a factory bike, to Yamaha, which is another factory bike. So you have to spend a year on the satellite, and where else to spend it but with the team you won the championship with. So I am convinced he's not going to spend a year at LCR, where Zarco is and Nakagami / Chantra is. He's going to go back to Prima Pramac, and then he'll go alongside Quartararo at Yamaha, replacing Alex Rins, who, has done nothing this year. And I know he's been injured.
Yeah.
But he's done nothing. And they should have really done something, because that bike's getting quick. They haven't got the V4 in there yet. That's what everyone's worrying about. That V4 engine in that Yamaha could be the next best thing to rival the Ducati and the Hondas of the past. But the upgrade they've now had 3 pole positions in a row? And 4 poles. Spain, France, and
Silverstone.
And Silverstone, I can't remember if it was 3 or 4.
He
but
should have
3 in a
won,
row.
of course, at Silverstone, if he hadn't had the ride height failure.
Yeah, which
going to win the race.
Wasn't the engine's fault. So I've got a feeling, and we knew that we saw what Miller was like at Silverstone as well, had the pace. So, sorry, there was a fly on my keyboard. But that Yamaha now has pace across all 4 bikes, and it's a customer team, but it's a factory bike. And it's the same trick that Martin did with Prima Pramac before, because he had the factory Ducati, but it was a satellite team, so he was able to go to a factory team. So it's complicated, but I reckon that's where it's going. But before I get on to the next situation, we have Zarco out of contract, Miller, who only has a 1-year contract, Luca Marini concluding his 2 years, Franco Morbidelli at the VR46 team as well, also signed up for 1 year as well. So they're the big ones that could be leaving. Acosta's signed up, but he's looking a bit shaky. Bastianini, go on.
What about Mir? Do you know what his? He's been rubbish, hasn't he? On the
Honda. I think the latest rumor is that he was looking at was KTM. So alongside, because Maverick isn't exactly happy with where he thought he would be on a factory KTM bike. He thought it'd be more up there, and he hasn't been. So I think Mia's sort of looking around the KTM area, but he is locked into I think a 2-year contract. And we know from past experiences that if you want to get out of a contract with Honda, it's going to cost you a lot of money. Mark Marquez made that so. So, yeah, it's going to start the silly season early. And I'm expecting a lot of chat on Friday in the commentary box about all this when we get going and when everyone ends the TT madness and starts. MotoGP is going on. And then the week after, we've got all the mess as well with World Superbikes. Also, complete sidestep, Nico Bulliger was tipped to replace Mikel Piro as the wild card in MotoGP for Ducati. So that's come out of the blue that he could come and do a couple of races. I don't know when that's going to be, but we'll keep an eye on that. So last weekend, despite all of the situation that's going on between him and Aprilia, Martin was actually in attendance at Misano for the Aprilia All-Stars event. Now, at this event, he told MotoGP.com that he plans to start training on a motorcycle again in the middle of this month, but it's unclear when we'll see him back competing again. Although Martin clearly wants to break away from an Aprilia bike that's not strong like the Ducati, there will come a point later in the season where he's riding for Aprilia again. Now, he's got an update on how he's progressing from his injuries and the surgery that followed. This is the statement that Aprilia sent out as well. Jorge Martin has been checked by Dr. Javier Mia and Dr. Engel Kishate as well for a follow-up. In the chest, the rib fractures follow their psychologic evaluation. Martin underwent a clinical examination and CT scan of the chest and wrist. The clinical outcome is fairly positive as the distal radius fracture is consolidated. The fracture line of the scaphoid is still visible, and further electromagnetic therapies must be considered intensively. A new medical check will be performed in 1 month. Dr. Javier Mia, by the way, is the same doctor who will be performing the surgery on Lance Stroll as well, if he hasn't done so already. Jorge Martin should rest for the rest of the year and come back strong in 2026. The problem is, if he doesn't ride this year, then the Aprilia contract would still be valid because he hasn't actually ridden the bike. So he kind of needs to ride the bike in order to evaluate it, in order to go. So it's sort of like he's damned if he does, damned if he doesn't. So, yeah, it's going to be a tricky one, that one. But, Matt, some of the others, how awkward would it be for the remainder of the season, as I'm pointing out, with Martin and Aprilia having to work together? And do you fear the situation might end up in a courtroom? I'm getting Honda vibes with Mark.
And talking of Mark, it was Dr. Mir that fixed Mark's arm eventually after all those shenanigans with Mark's arm over the last couple of years. So he's pretty much Doctor numero uno in Spain at the moment. It's going to be awkward, yes, when eventually we ever see Jorge back. I think we talked about it on the show after the Qatar crash. Just stay at home for the rest of the season, maybe come back for the flyaway, the odd flyaway at the end of the year, get fit and come back properly. Which is
start Australia.
Or maybe come back for Australia or somewhere, Japan maybe. We'll see. But it is going to be awkward, and it's going to continue to be awkward until however this situation is sorted. Whether he stays. Now, will he stay because he doesn't have another option to go to, as we were talking about before, Yamaha or even Honda or anywhere else? Maybe if Josh's Pramac tip is right, then that might be his salvation to go back to the La Familia and go back to the championship winning team. That might be in the end his only way out. But if this continues to rumble on in the background here away from the on-track stuff, then it is going to be awkward. If he can come back and perform like Bezzecchi did at Silverstone, then that will be good. But it depends if he's already decided that he is going to be off and they've sorted this out in the courts or out of them, and he's going to be leaving at the end of the season. So it's just going to be a bit of a cluster from now until October, November, when the season finishes up in Valencia. But it'll all come out in the wash eventually.
Yeah, I don't really have too much to add on this. I just know moving forward, it's going to be an extremely awkward situation. They're just going to have to try to keep things as professional as they possibly can given the circumstances. So when Jorge Martin is healthy enough to go out and ride the bike, just go out there, do your job, which is to ride the bike, do the best job you can, try to score points, and if you're lucky, maybe even get a race win. But but that's probably going to be, what Jorge Martin's going to have to do when he's healthy enough to get back on the bike and race. Just be business professional. Same thing for the team as well. And then as soon as you get through all this business stuff, it'll all be over, and then you can move on to the next situation. I know it must be awkward for Aprilia because you're now going to be working with someone who clearly says that I don't want to be here at all. I don't want to ride your bike. I don't want anything to do with you. But for the rest of this year, you're gonna have to Aprilia's gonna have to deal with Jorge Martin, and Jorge Martin's gonna have to deal with Aprilia, whether both sides like it or not. So I know this is not gonna end well between these two. Another bridge burnt, as we've been saying, but both sides gonna have to make the best of this situation until it all comes to a head. And who really knows if this will end up in a courtroom? And maybe it will, maybe it won't. But given what we've seen about motorsports and courtrooms in the last few years, especially with the Alex Palou situation, Chip Ganassi Racing, and McLaren, nothing would surprise me anymore.
No, it wouldn't be either, to be fair. But the one thing I do know is that fact is if Jorge Martin keeps on burning bridges as well, the only person who's going to have him left is going to be Suzuki. And they're not even in the sport anymore because that's the only one he hasn't annoyed, as far as I know. Now, for the rest of the month, Red Bull Racing's Max Verstappen will have to be on his absolute best behaviour to avoid a one-race ban. As we initially covered on Sunday's Grid Live wrap-up show, Verstappen was told to give up the position to George Russell during the Spanish Grand Prix. Verstappen slowed down and drove right into Russell, which ultimately led to the four-time Formula One World Champion receiving a 10-second time penalty to demote him to 10th place. Now, when asked about the incident after the race, Verstappen was very unapologetic and didn't seem to think he did anything wrong. However, Russell, members of the media, and many F1 fans were critical of Verstappen's actions as he enters uncharted territory once again. Now, Verstappen currently has 11 penalty points, and you need 12 penalty points to receive a one-race ban. If Verstappen does something wrong on track in Canada or in Austria, that could put him over the edge and force him to sit out a Grand Prix race. If he makes it to the end of June without another major on-track incident, 2 of those penalty points will expire and he'll have some breathing room. Interesting enough, though, when asked about the collision between Verstappen and Russell, Helmut Marko told Cerberus TV that all hell broke loose and believed his driver made a serious misjudgment. Marko also has confidence in Verstappen's ability to control his emotions in Canada and Austria to avoid a one-race ban. The link to this article is in the video description below, and the photo taken by David Ramos from Getty Images. Max Verstappen has put out a statement. We had an exciting strategy and a good race in Barcelona till the safety car came out. Our tyre choice to the end and some moves after the safety car restart fueled my frustration, leading to a move that was not right and shouldn't have happened. I always give everything out there for the team, and emotions can run high. You win some together, you lose some together. See you in Montreal. Well, I don't know how to describe it, but mainly when I was in the commentary box, I said that it was a comedy of his own errors. If he makes the mistake coming out the last corner with the safety car, Leclerc does drive into him, but Verstappen also didn't pull out either way. Russell did hit him, but he didn't need to get the place back, and then he hits Russell as retaliation. It was very much a hothead moment, as I said in the commentary. But what do you think of Verstappen's so-called apology just then? And do you share Marco's confidence that a one-race ban will actually be avoided?
Well, Josh, it's not really an apology, is it? He didn't really say I'm sorry to George Russell, to Mercedes for what I did, or to F1 fans or the kids watching at home who look up to me. He didn't say anything of that. If I had to guess, anything, honestly, I don't think Max Verstappen is going to be changing his driving style anytime soon. I think Max is who he is, for better or worse. And I think that he had to put out this statement right here because a PR person at Red Bull must have told him, been like, what that movie you made, and how, and the optics after the fact of how you acted after the race, is that didn't necessarily cast you in the best look. So it would probably be in your best interest, to put out this statement, and admit that this move was not right and it shouldn't have happened. So I think this was mostly, handled more than likely by Red Bull PR there to, try to make the situation somewhat better. And in regards to Helmut Marko being confident in Max avoiding a one race ban, I'm actually going to bet that Max will avoid a one race ban. Hopefully, for his sake, he'll be on his P's and Q's, in Montreal and the Red Bull ring, so nothing happens. And I do think, if he's in some questionable situations, I do think that they might give him some leeway. I think in order for him to pick up that one penalty point to put him over the edge, he would have to do something, extremely egregious on the racetrack where you can say, we can't avoid it. We're unfortunately going to have to give you this penalty point and sit you out one race. And the point I brought up on the wrap-up show, given, that Max Verstappen seems to be the only driver in the world who can drive this Red Bull car, I said on the wrap-up show, who are they going to put in the car if Max gets a one race ban? Like, there's literally no one you can possibly put in that car who can get a points finish in Red Bull. Yuki Tsunoda, is having a very rough time in that second car, and I'm surprised we haven't heard more talks about Isaac Hadjar, giving it a go maybe later on during the summer break. It doesn't matter who you put in that car, whether it's Liam Lawson, Yuki Tsunoda, Isaac Hadjar, or even if they want to throw in a Yuma Iwaza from Super Formula, see what he can do in the car. It doesn't seem like there's nobody on this earth besides Max Verstappen can drive that Red Bull. So if Max gets a one race ban, I fear both Red Bull cars are not going to finish in the points, and they're going to look like back markers, or at least in the midfield, not able to do much of anything. So if Max were to get the one race ban, I think it would hurt the team more than anything, and they wouldn't be able to get the points that they would have scored if Max was in the car. And, just to sum it all up, I think that he'll be on his P's and Q's and more than likely avoid a one race ban. But if he does some questionable things where it could go either way, I think they'll show him some leeway, not, giving that penalty point. And if he does something overly egregious, they'll have no choice, but to give him that, dreaded number 12, and then he'll be sitting out a Grand Prix.
Yeah, and he'll then perhaps sit out the race at the Red Bull ring, which will be a massive egg on the face for the whole team and the company if their star man is not there. And we know how much Dutch support travels down to Austria to support that race. It's not an apology in that statement, because the words "sorry for my actions" or "apologize" aren't in the statement. So it's not an apology, it's just a bunch of words. As Josh said, the late race safety car kind of flummoxed them and knocked them off their strategy, where they only had the hardest tyres available to put him on to have any chance at the end. Could have stayed out, of course, and then he would have been even more of a sitting duck against cars on fresher tyres coming from behind. He made the mistake coming out of the last corner on the restart, which was a miraculous save. Let's not forget that. That was a great save. Otherwise, that would have been an airplane crash into the pit lane, into the pit wall on driver's right there. Then, of course, he and Leclerc did not do what Senna and Mansell did all those years ago at the very, well, not quite the very same portion of the racetrack, but the same straight, which was not touch each other in a straight line down there. And then, of course, George decided, I want a piece of this too, and ended up knocking Max off. And then on all the confusion, Max was shouting about the Leclerc touch on the straight, such and such. And then, of course, he was told to give the place back to Russell. And then he just decided that he wasn't going to turn left for turn 5, their hairpin there, and just drove straight into the side of the Mercedes. I think it should have been a race ban on the spot. That is absolutely not the way a world champion should be driving. We've talked about this before with Max. He is supposed to be up here for everyone in the junior formula to look up to in all the karting and stuff. This is the way, it should be done. And it just isn't all of the time. He's the sorest of sore losers. He's not even he's a sore winner, let's be honest. When he does win, generally goes down with some gripe about something. Denver says Danny Ricciardo could come back for a... That would be interesting, wouldn't it? If they need to call on someone. pick up the phone to Perth, Australia, and see if Danny Rick is available. I don't know. Is he going to get through Canada without problem? Are we going to see a pile on from people in the race? Or if we can get around Max and cause him some problems, he might bump into one of us, and then we can get him a race ban. That could be interesting to see if anything comes of that, perhaps. But for me, it should have been a disqualification. Maybe not a ban, but certainly a disqualification. Throw him out of the race there at the end. You can't drive like that and endanger your fellow competitor, even if it was at perhaps slow speed.
Now, I'm having to go to my phone here because for the life of me, I can't find the steward's document, which gives us the information. It's not on the web. It's not in the FIA file. So that was supposed, but I did have it.
There was a line in there, wasn't there? I saw it on Sunday night.
Yeah,
about
here it is.
The FIA said, "Oh, here we go."
Nope.
That they were going to let that go, and he wouldn't have to give the place back. It was the team's directive to let Russell through because the FIA thought that Russell's move was fair. Basically, to paraphrase, Max Verstappen needs to grow up, says Adam. You're kind of agreeing with what I just said before.
It has actually vanished.
Interesting.
That I am surprised about this. The document that we need has gone from the stewards. It has vanished off the face of the earth. I'm double checking, but I can't see a thing. I've never seen this happen before. Here we go. There we go. Right, I've got it in my emails. My email. Oh, where is it? There it is. My emails still have it. I'll try and dim it down. Yeah, there we go. And I'll zoom in for you because this is the bit that I did not like it. Car 1 suddenly accelerated and collided. Can you see that? Car 1 suddenly accelerated and collided with car 63 at the apex of the corner. The collision was undoubtedly caused by the actions of car 1, with therefore imposed 10-second time penalty on car 1. So that was what I was looking for. And that is what Matt's going to agree that he was heard as well. The whole thing, the reason that he's got these penalties is the stewards reviewed positioning, marshalling system data, video timing, telemetry, and in-car video evidence. On the radio communications, it was clear that the driver of car 1 was asked by his team to give the position back to car 63 for what they perceived to be an earlier breach by car 1 for leaving the track and gaining a lasting advantage. Brackets. In fact, we had later determined that we would take no further action in related to that incident, close brackets. The driver of car 1 was clearly unhappy with his team's request to give the position back. At the approach to turn 5, car 1 significantly reduced its speed, thereby appearing to allow car 63 to overtake. However, after car 63 got ahead of car 1 at the entry to turn 5, car 1 suddenly accelerated and collided with car 63. The collision was undoubtedly caused by the actions of car 1. We therefore impose a 10-second time penalty on car 1. That also got us the 3 time penalty points. So the stewards had the onboard camera, and I've seen it myself now as well. He does. He accelerates mid-corner. He doesn't turn the steering wheel like Rosberg, and just the throttle goes on. I've seen the trace. So he did it deliberately. There's no ifs, no buts. And it's mad. It's just insane, isn't it? But yeah, Max now got the points. Go on.
The whole sequence, as we just talked about, the on the wrong tyres, hit by Leclerc, then knocked off by Russell. We've all played Formula One games or racing games in general when we've had to do something on the hardest setting and it's not gone our way. You can't press pause and restart in Formula One Grand Prix. And that was Max throwing his controller at the wall.
Forgetting where he's not. He's not at esports, is he? Right. Max Verstappen thought he was in Daytona on iRacing. Probably did.
That's what George Russell said when he went to the media. He said Max forgot it was a Formula One race. He thought he was on iRacing. And funny enough, George Russell also took a shot at a different driver in another series. He was asked a question along the lines of, "Is there any other driver who would do something like this?" He said, "Yeah, another British driver who currently races in Formula E." And you can probably guess who that is. Dan Ticktum, because of his checkered past.
Oh dear. Right, just quickly, is Max Verstappen going to get the 12th race ban? Let's take a look at how he's got 11 so far. 2 points came at Austria last year for running into Lando Norris. Oh yeah, what did he do there? Oh yeah, he didn't. He didn't turn in, did he? 2 points then came at Mexico, hitting Lando Norris off the track. What did he do there? Oh yeah, I remember now. 1 point came at Brazil, and that was the virtual safety car infringement. So he was speeding in the virtual safety car. 1 point came at the Qatar Grand Prix for driving unnecessarily slowly in qualifying. Now, that is the only one on this list I disagree with, because he did not impede George Russell, no matter what Russell was going to say. They were both on a slow lap, and that, to me, was just ridiculous. 2 points came in Abu Dhabi for causing the contact with Piastri on lap 1.
Yep, fair game.
And then 3 points came in Spain for contact with Russell. So, there you go. So, out of all of those, he's deserved all of them, bar 1 point. And that was the Qatar one. So, yeah.
And of course, that went through the roof, didn't it, with the Russell and Max chat that then rolled into Abu Dhabi the week after in the press conferences and stuff. So,
oh, yeah, by the way, guess who did the press conference? Already. I know, already in Canada. They're going to put them together, yeah.
Of course they are.
I'll be certainly tuning into that one, because don't forget, Sky Air it delayed. So the media get it an hour earlier. So I'll be logging in and taking a look at that.
Who's going to be the unfortunate driver from Alpine or Sauber that's going to have to sit in the middle?
Probably Colin
Hulkenberg, because he got a good result last week.
And Hulkenberg was desperate for Leclerc to get a penalty so that he'd be on the podium. It could have happened.
Good luck, Tom Clarkson.
Yeah. Oh my God, he's gonna. I think LA. I don't know. I don't know. No, LA's not in Canada, but I hope she's in another one soon. Get the interviews for her. Okay, I see one of the drivers getting under Max's skin in Canada.
Yeah,
easy to do, really. Very easy to do.
We've seen things happen at Montreal before, haven't we? With between things, remember the Vettel moving the position thing around in Parc Fermé after the stuff with Lewis. So it's happened before.
Yeah, hold on to your hats when we get to Montreal as well. And it's one of my favourite races of the year. Okay, we've come to the end of the regular news show, so it's time to hand over to Matt White for the latest from the Grid ePay update.
Thank you, Josh. Another busy weekend of endurance motorsport across the weekend for the Grid Endurance Performance Index of 2025. And we'll start on the streets of Detroit on Saturday afternoon, where IMSA was in action and an Acura took victory. Nick Yellerly and Renger van der Zande coming home to win the sprint race on Saturday afternoon in the GTP class. GTD was won by Ford on home soil, Mike Rockenfeller and Sebastian Priaulx getting the victory on home soil in the number 64 Mustang. So congratulations to those guys. IMSA moves on. Of course, they've got their Le Mans break, and we'll be talking much more about Le Mans on the show next week. And IMSA will be back in action at Watkins Glen in a few weeks' time for the 6 hour. Also, over the weekend at Queensland Raceway, we had 2 races for the Australian GT World Challenge Europe, although these pictures are both from Sydney Motorsport Park. Brock Feeney and Brad Schumacher got the victory on Saturday in the Audi, and it was another Audi win on Sunday for Alex Peroni and Mark Rosser getting the victory there for that team. So a big Audi weekend at Queensland Raceway, and that continued in Thailand at the weekend at Buriram, where another Audi was victorious in the first race of the 2 for GT World Challenge Asia. James Yu and Kung Fu Cheng, some of us know him as Frankie from when his time was here in the UK in single seaters, they picked up the win on Saturday. And on Sunday, Ben Green and Prince Jeffrey Ibrahim got the victory in their Corvette. The biggest race of the weekend in terms of the point scoring actually happened at Monza on Sunday afternoon. It was the second race of the Endurance Cup for GT World Challenge Europe, and a win for last year's champions. Although Matteo Cairoli is new to the team, he was in that car along with Lucas Hauer and Maro Engel, getting the victory overall in the Pro Cup. The Gold Cup was won by Jens Klingman, who of course came through the carnage of this race last year to win overall, and he was alongside Ben Tuck and Faisal Al Zubair for the Paradigm competition. Almanar Racing BMW. Silver Cup was won by Wilmore, Mex Janssen and Jared Wabazerski, and in Bronze Cup, Loic Hartog and Antares Al took victory there at Monza. What does that do for the point standings? Well, here is the updated points. Felipe Nasr and Nick Tandy do still lead but they only finished 4th at the weekend at Detroit. So their score has come down almost as enough to lose them the lead. As you can see, they're very close between those two and Antonio Giovinazzi of Ferrari WEC. And of course, they will all be in action at Le Mans next weekend. So we could perhaps see, pretty certain, in fact, that we will see in some shape or form, unless, of course, the Porsche ends up winning the race, a change of lead for week 12. That will be of the Grid EPI, sorry, after Le Mans. A couple of Belgians in the top 5 there with Charles Weerts and Lawrence Vanfour, and James Collado holding on, another of the Ferrari WEC drivers. He is there in 10th position. Here's a look at how the top 50 stand going into this weekend, where it's actually a quiet one, because of course it's Le Mans Test this weekend, rolling into the 24 hours next weekend. So the only Grid EPI update races for next week's show will come from Zandvoort, where the DTM and the ADAC GT Masters are in action for 2 races each for those championships. And as I mentioned, we'll have a full Le Mans preview for you on the show next Wednesday as we build up to the big race at Circuit de la Sarthe. That's all from the EPI this week. Let's hand to Kobe. He's got a few more headlines from the week that was.
Thanks, Matt. Time for some more motorsports news from around the world. Andres Perez de Lara will make his NASCAR Xfinity Series debut at his home race in Mexico City. He'll drive the number 91 Chevrolet for DGM Racing in the Chilango 150 with sponsorship from Telcel and Infinitium. Perez currently drives full-time in the Craftsman Truck Series for Spire Motorsports, and this will be an off weekend for the Truck Series so he can completely focus on the race in Mexico. Alongside Daniel Suarez, Perez and his fellow countrymen will join the likes of Adrian Fernandez, Jorge Gatters, and Michel Jourdain as the only Mexican drivers to compete in a NASCAR National Series event at Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez. Perez's presence will also give the locals someone to cheer for, as he's a native of Mexico City, graphic courtesy of DGM Racing. And after finishing on the podium in the NTT IndyCar Series race on the streets of Detroit, Santino Ferrucci was penalized for his number 14 Chevrolet fell in post-race technical inspection. IndyCar officials discovered that Ferrucci's car was under the required driver ballast weight. The AJ Foyt racing entry was also 10 pounds over the minimum weight for road and street course tracks, which is 1,785 pounds according to IndyCar. This rule is in place to equalize the weight of various size drivers, so there is no advantage based on the weight of the driver. While Ferrucci gets to keep his second place finish, the team was fined $25,000, lost 25 driver and entrant points, the bonus point for leading the lap, and they were also deemed ineligible to receive engine points and prize money associated with the race. Photo taken from Joe Skabinski from Penske Entertainment. And AJ Foyt Racing put out a statement here that says, "We acknowledge and accept the penalty issued for being 1.8 pounds under the required driver ballast weight. This was an unintentional oversight, and we take full responsibility for the mistake. Our car was, in fact, 10 pounds over the minimum total weight, and the discrepancy was not intended to gain a competitive advantage. However, we recognize that compliance with every rule is critical to ensuring fairness in this sport, no matter how minor the deviation may seem. We are working closely with our technical team to strengthen our processes and ensure this does not happen again. We're grateful for the passion and integrity of IndyCar, and while this situation is disappointing, we respect the rules that keep our competition honest and safe. Most importantly, we remain committed to racing the right way for our fans, partners, and for our sport." After losing his NASCAR Cup Series ride with the team last year, Corey LaJoie is returning home to Spire Motorsports for 9 races in the Craftsman Truck Series. LaJoie will drive the number 07 Chevrolet Silverado in 9 of the final 13 races. As the team competes for the owner's title, he'll compete in races starting this weekend at Michigan, and the following races are Richmond, Darlington, Bristol, New Hampshire, the Charlotte Roval, Talladega, Martinsville, and Phoenix. LaJoie said he's looking forward to getting back in the seat, chasing some wins, and hopefully get the owner's championship for Spire at Phoenix. Team co-owner Jeff Dickerson said he ran into LaJoie in the motorhome lot early in the spring and asked him about coming home to the team that he helped build, graphic courtesy of Spire Motorsports. Tickford Racing has locked in his driver lineup in the Repco Supercars Championship for the next couple of years. Cam Waters and Thomas Randall both signed a 2-year contract extension through the 2027 season with a 1-year option after that. This is a huge deal for Tickford and Ford to keep Waters specifically in the Blue Oval family because Chevrolet aggressively pursued his services. Waters said Tickford has been home for a long time and believes the team has some unfinished business as they look to continue pushing for wins and championships, while Randall is looking forward to continuing with Waters as his teammate. While the team CEO, Simon Brookhouse, added that this is a massive moment for the organization because keeping both drivers means consistency, leadership, and talent behind the wheel, photo courtesy of supercars. And that's all of the headlines I have for you this week. So I'm going to turn it over to Matt for everyone's favorite game. Pick a winner.
Pick a winner back for another busy week this week. And we will, there is the standings, this is how it stands over from this weekend gone. And we've got now a tie for the lead with Matt B and Kobe there. The two pick a winner legends, basically, of this game have found their way to the top of the standings. It's taken a little while to both get to the top, but they are now joint top on 27 points, with me trailing 2 points back in third position. Where is Josh? He's just crept himself into the top 10 there. Josh, you've made Q3 with pick a winner, basically. On
and
9
Fernando
points.
Alonso!
He's finally on the board. Let's start. We weren't going to do it in this order, but as we've just been talking about supercars, let's start there, shall we, with our picks for this weekend, because they're in Perth at the weekend. 3 races across the weekend, 2 on Saturday. We'll do those on the show here, or at least try to. And of course, as we always say, you can get involved with the game by using the hashtag pick a winner on social media between now and the start of the race. You've got up until the green flag drops, all the lights go out, or whatever, on whatever race it is over the weekend, to get your pick in, and I hope that you are successful. And you can get yourself on the board there, which John has crept himself. He's got the whole of page 2 to himself there in 26th place. Let's start then with our Perth picks for supercars. I am going to go with Feeney, and then I'm going to go with Nick Percat to pull a surprise in race 2. Just a hunch on Saturday in Perth. Kobe, who are you going with?
Yeah, I'm a little surprised he picked Nick Percat, but who knows what could possibly happen here at Perth. But I'm gonna play it safe and say Brock Feeney for race 1 and race 2, but subject to change depending on qualifying, as all supercars put out a graphic, I believe it was a few days ago, showing that most of the winners come from the front row or whatever. So if Brock Feeney can qualify first or second, I feel confident with him winning. But for now, unofficially picking Brock Feeney for race 1 and race 2. Who you have, Josh?
Well, wasn't Nick Percat on the podium in Tasmania?
And he won at Tasmania last year as well.
So that's not an outside pick, but I was took me back a bit. I'll go with Brock Feeney for race 1, but for race 2, I'm between Will Brown and Matthew Payne, to be fair. So I think I'll go Brown to begin with, but Feeney will take race 1.
And of course, there's the longer race to come for supercars in Perth on Sunday. So 3 points available there. WRC is back there in Sardinia this weekend, on the island just off the coast of Italy, for the traditional summer gravel event. I am going to go. It's been a bit of a Toyota fest so far this season in WRC. I believe that's probably going to continue, although Hyundai will be biting to try and get back in the game here and get a win on the board. I'm going to stick with Toyota, and I'm going to go with Kalle Rovanperä to win at the weekend. Kobe?
I think I'm going to stick with the guy who usually gets me a lot of points. Hopefully he'll win so I can take the lead from Matthew Bro. Give me the legend of the sport, Sebastian Ogier.
Yeah, Ogier back in this weekend, of course, in Sardinia. And the last one to pick for this week on the show, at least, and of course there'll be 2 points available for MotoGP at Aragon this weekend, the second trip to Spain this year. Aragon in a different place in the calendar what it would be normally in September. We'd normally be heading to sort of Barcelona at this time of the year, but of course the F1 was there at the weekend. So we're going to Aragon this weekend. Sprint race, of course, on Saturday. It's going to be one of the Marquez brothers. I think it might be Alex.
And I'm going to go with the other Marquez brother. I'm going with Mark.
Mark. If I'm not mistaken, Mark has won every sprint this year.
He has.
So, it's Mark. He is the sprint king. And he's only, well, to be fair, we've had 5 different race winners in a row now. So Sunday's up for grabs. That's the amazing bit, if you think about it. That's unusual in MotoGP, where we're all saying, oh, it's a Ducati domination. We've had 5 different race winners. It's amazing.
Yeah. And Mark has good form at that racetrack from previous years. He's got a corner named after him there, so he should go well. So there's the opportunities to pick a winner. There is the hashtag on screen. There's our social media where we are. Get your picks in for 2 points available for MotoGP at Aragon, 3 points for Supercars at Perth, WRC Sardinia, and NASCAR at Michigan on Sunday. Alex Marquez's Adams pick also for the sprint race. I'll probably change that by Saturday lunchtime when Mark's on the pole. Feeney and Waters and Chazzy are Adams picks for Perth, and he's also going with Kobe with Ogier for Sardinia. Get your picks in, get your name on the board. There is still 120 plus points available, and one of the leaders are only on 27. So a long, long way to go in Grid Network TV's Pick a Winner for 2025. Get your picks in on social media. Finish up the show, as always, with hots and nots. Where do we start?
There was not a lot of hots, was there?
There wasn't really. I feel like most weekends there aren't that many hots, but there's quite often more nots than hots.
I can't think of one.
I've only watched the Grand Prix and the IndyCar race really from the weekend. Still got NASCAR to catch up with. So I don't have a hot apart from Hajar continuing to do Hajar things, as I'm going to continue to call it this year.
I think Isaac's a hot. He was really good in that F1 race. I'm trying to think. There wasn't a lot.
Piastri for his drive, really. He didn't have much pressure.
Yeah, Piastri did it. I mean, he fought the start, but got a great launch at the exit down to turn one. Lando really struggled. I was actually going to throw in Fernando Alonso getting a point finally, 2 points in fact, to come in. So that was sort of needed after his worst start since Bernardi. That was good.
And for it to come on home was obviously good for Fernando. And he was making some good passes for that race as well.
If you haven't seen the Formula E, put your fingers in your ears for 30 seconds. Saturday race 1 is a hot for me for the stunning strategy drive from the two DS Penske's. That was good for me. No, that's it. There wasn't really a hot over the weekend. It was a very, I'm not going to say negative, but there wasn't a lot going on where you'd go, oh, yeah, that was brilliant. It was more like, it was not then hot. And that's what you get when you put the 3 F1 races back to back where you can't overtake at. So, it's, yeah.
I had this discussion with someone at work yesterday. I love my Formula One, but after 3 races in a row, I kind of need a break from it, which we're going to get this week before going to Canada, which, as you mentioned earlier, is always box office. Good evening or good afternoon to Joe, who's just joined us. He said, hot Nick Cassidy finally maybe getting rid of his Portland ongoing slump from last year.
Well, he's left Jaguar, so he's leaving Jaguar. So
Has that actually been confirmed yet?
Yes,
or not?
Yeah. They confirmed it over the weekend. Yeah. He's off.
Cool. Adam says Amazon's Prime coverage of NASCAR continuing to be hot. Really
I enjoyed it.
The show that we talked about last week, but they haven't caught up with Nashville yet.
I think the overriding. I'm going to surprise you. The knot only came to me today, and it's not Max Verstappen. I feel like we covered Max Verstappen earlier.
Yeah, I was going to have him in knots before I realised we were going to be taking a bit more of a deep dive. So we'll park that.
I think the biggest knot has to come from the fans. And I'm surprised you can call yourself fans. Anybody who watched the Channel 4 coverage this weekend will, of course, know that it was hosted by Lee Mackenzie with punditry with David Coulthard and Alice Powell. Now, Lee has been looking a little bit fluctuating in her weight recently. And I've noticed it as well. And I was a bit worried about her because Lee is a fiercely determined, fit woman. Honestly, nobody can keep up with her inside the paddock. Her gym skills are legendary. So I was slightly worried. I thought, there's something going on there. But I haven't had a chance to ask anybody if she's okay. So cut to today, and she's had to feel the need, to go on social media and say about how many horrible comments she had got about her weight over the weekend. And first of all, that is never, ever, ever acceptable to do that. That is disgusting. And that is my ultimate knot, as to people commenting on her appearance. And the bit that I was really nervous about, because I've seen people's weight fluctuate before, and I sometimes know that means you require surgery because something is wrong. Lee has had surgery, and she's in recovery for surgery, and I think she said there might need to be a few more. But that is her private life. Lee is a very private person. She's always kept herself away from the public eye. So for her to have to come out and say that shouldn't have happened. And if you are anybody who's commented on her size or anything, just know that there is always something else going on behind the scenes of a person, and you never know the full truth. And it's horrible to even comment. And I wish her the best of recovery, because she is the loveliest person you could ever have the pleasure of knowing, and she is one of a kind. So yeah, that was my ultimate knot of the whole weekend. Was the fans who have gone against Lee McKenzie. Actually, I'll add to that with everybody commenting about Rachel Brooks as well. I saw that with all the Max Verstappen comments that were saying
from her questioning in the pen.
Yeah, and then her treatment of Lewis as well. I thought there was nothing wrong with what Rachel said. I would have handled the same thing. Max was not giving any answers. We all knew that Max was wrong. The stewards knew Max was wrong. So, of course, you're going to press him on the question. If he's saying, oh, no, I'm not, I don't want to talk about that. If Max is being cocky and arsey with you, as a reporter, you would then double down and drill harder. I mean, if you're a fan, I'm sorry, not all of us can be like anybody interviewing the president and just leaving things go when he's clearly talking nuts. Proper journalists will punch the question out of you and they will not hold you up on it. And that's what Rachel was doing. And she could see that, she saw that Max was being cocky, so she acted firm and tough with him. And she could see that Lewis was dejected and upset and empathized with him to try and get a question. And you've got to realize that these people travel together. It is one big family. Nobody hates anybody. They're all one big family, all of them. So that is why I know full well that afterwards, Max would have gone to Rachel and either said, I'm sorry, I was being like this, or can we talk about that question? Because that's what the drivers do. They go up and talk, and they talk it out naturally. And Max is one of the most down-to-earth people you can ever interview. I've had 2 words from the guy throughout my career as a journalist, and he does them with a smile and a wave. So, and he's a good guy. He is. He's on track action sometimes. It's a bit.
Perhaps it's the paddock mentality, perhaps. And of course, it was after the race, in the heat of the moment. You could see when he got out of the car, he wasn't happy with what had gone down, etc., etc. So, but yeah, I was going to bring up Lee, and you've done it for me. So we wish Lee the best. Ben, good evening to you. Says Max Franz Hermann Verstappen, the #1 driver at Red Bull, car number 33, the 4-time defending world champion, is a not. You can tell me I missed the segment. Yes, indeed. Go back and, as they say on the other things, watch again, rewind and watch again. Not from Denver, says Larson, pulling out when our NASCAR drivers pulling out of going to supercars. To challenge themselves in a new environment, or not. As I said in our chat when we were posting about this in the week in our Grid family group, this was never confirmed that it was going to happen, but now it's been confirmed that it's not going to happen, which is a shame. There was all the talk about Kyle Busch going down to do Adelaide at the end of last year, which never happened, and now it looks like Kyle Larson is not going to make the trip down to South Australia either. I'm going to call it a late hot, because as many of our regular viewers will know, I'm well behind on things. February's Bathurst 12 Hour I've watched this week, and it was excellent. Brilliant race. Please add to my playlist. Go back from a couple of weeks ago and get on that link. My not from this weekend, and it will be forever. My not from this weekend, and it will be forever until they change something or go somewhere else, is the Detroit Street Circuit.
Yeah, do you remember that Wi-Fi issue? Hello.
Oh, am I back?
Am I back? Yeah, do you remember that Wi-Fi issue I told you about?
It's gone again. Brilliant. Okay, well, if anyone can still hear me, I will say that the Detroit Street Circuit makes some of Formula E's cobbled together stuff look like Spa. It is awful, absolutely terrible. Please go back to Belle Isle, or just don't go there at all. I know you can't; it's a big market, but the track is terrible, absolutely awful.
Oh, Detroit.
Detroit, yeah, absolutely terrible. Josh is back now. I was just saying it makes some of Formula E's cobbled together street circuits look like Spa.
I'm on the neighbour's Wi-Fi.
Awful. And we are thankful that Louis Foster wasn't injured in that big crash with Felix Rosenqvist when he said the suspension.
That was terrifying.
The on board of Felix when he got the hit was scary. So good to see them both get out of that. Okay.
I will add you one more that could be a possible not if it comes to fruition.
Oh, okay.
And that is Max Verstappen in 2 weeks' time in Canada acts like he did in the press conference after Austria and sulks in the press conference, and knowing him possibly might swear, which then gets him a ban before the weekend even starts. I've got a feeling that might happen. Because I know Max, he feels like, woe is me. He's got that. I think Toto put it best last year, because Lewis did the same thing. Senna had it, Schumacher had it, Hamilton had it, Vettel had it, Verstappen's got it. They need the world to be against them. It's like a driving force.
Yeah.
To men, because Senna had the FA against him, Vettel had the team, and the fans and Mark, and it seems like that's what drives them. So I swear Max will act very annoying in Canada.
It's going to be interesting, isn't it, to see what happens over that weekend in the press conference on Thursday, and then of course on track to see, because of course he's now got an FIA Platinum grade, so he could go off and end up being on the Nürburgring 24-hour entry list, which is the week after the Canadian Grand Prix.
I mean, he so desperately tried to get the race banned for the Le Mans race, didn't he? But that didn't happen. So next plan.
If he gets through the race weekend of Canada and then ends up missing the Red Bull Ring, I would not put it past me that he goes to Nürburgring, which is the weekend in between for the 24. If he can find himself a drive somewhere and he owns a team and they can make a late entry change and stick one of those Ferraris on the grid that he owns.
He's not allowed, is he? Has he done the familiarization?
By the time that weekend rolls around and he goes through the practice sessions and whatnot, then he will be okay.
Ah, good. I didn't know how it works.
Because he's now graded, because he wasn't graded before, strangely, or whatever it is, as a full-time world champion. He now can do it, much like we have the and we'll probably talk about this on the show next week, the nighttime laps that you have to do at Le Mans, kind of a similar thing. Do them in the practice sessions and then they count.
Oh, lovely.
Because of course that is the only time you can run in the night at Le Mans without being in the race, of course. Yeah,
and the one good thing is actually with Le Mans is the fact is that they do it over the shortest night, so it's not actually that much. It annoys me because I love the night bits, and you leave your commentary box like 3:30 a.m. and it's first light and it goes, there we go, right, next. It helps kick away the 2-hour blues though, and unlike what Martin Haven suggested a couple of years ago, I'd rather have cake. Go Google the clip. Okay, are we done with hot and nuts?
Yes.
Good, let's wrap it up quick.
Before the internet goes, let's get out of here.
Yeah, because I'm on the neighbours now. I told you it was probably a bit dodgy. I'm surprised it lasted an hour. Taking a look at our upcoming schedule, we can stay tuned for the Grid Live pre-race, a standalone show to preview NASCAR at Michigan. Sunday, Grid Live pre-race wrap-up. That is 90 minutes after the Cup Series race at Michigan. And Monday night, 7 p.m. Eastern, Grid Encore, recapping the ARCA and truck races. Guess where? At Michigan. Please do continue to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thank you very much for helping us reach the 1,600 subscribers. And now we're inching closer to our next milestone of 2,000 subscribers. You can hit the bell icon to get notifications so you always know when we go on the air. And you can follow our social media platforms and visit gridnetworktv.com. You can take 5 minutes to invest in the Grid Network through Patreon. You can join Colin, Mark, Michelle, Robin, David, and Matthew who invest each month in the Grid Network. And we encourage you to join these fine folks, help us keep us on the air. Once we hit $500 per month, we can afford to send our team to the track more often and continue to grow our media outlet. The link to all of that is in the video description below. And if you want to make a one-time donation, you can click on the Buy Me a Coffee link, get your name on the board, and invest as much as you want, and consider buying a specific on-air personality a cup of coffee, and they will thank you on the air. For Kobe Lambeth and Matt White from the Grid Endurance Performance Index, I'm Joshua Birch from JB Motorsports. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.